Good morning, everyone. Today we're going to learn a new topic, the Communist Revolution and the establishment of PRC from 1921 to 1949. Under this topic, it included 5 parts. Firstly, the birth of Communist Party of China in 1921, the first United Front 1924 to 1927. Actually, we already talked about these 2 parts, right? So we're going to start part C from this new topic, which is the development and struggle of the Communist Party in 1927 to 1936, and the formation and collapse of Second United Front 1937 to 1949, and last but not the least, establishment of the PRC in 1949. So, from all these topics, if you were to set an essay type question for this part, what kind of essay type question will you set? I think the easiest one should be trace and explain the relationship between Kuomintang and CCP between 1921 to 1949, right? Because all these events, to some extent, included their cooperation or conflicts. So for this, I think this is important for you to review the relationship and put it into different stages, and you need to be able to explain their relationship in different stages. For example, we talk about the formation of Communist Party after the May 4th movement, the new Soviet Union, and also the anti-Western, anti-capitalist, and anti-imperialist young Chinese, they found each other, they formed the Communist Party of China. And Chen Duxiu was elected as the first secretary of the Central Bureau. And we talk about the reorganization of Kuomintang under Sun Yat-sen. He was trying to reorganize Kuomintang, and they formed the first united front with his effort, right? But we all knew this kind of first united front was only a marriage of convenience, only for their own interests. For the Kuomintang, on one side, it was for Soviet aid. That means they need financial support. And they needed communist ties with the workers, peasants, and the masses. So any uprising or any revolution they will lead will have a huge impacts on the country, since they have ties with people from different classes. On the other side, for the CCP, it's because they were still very new. So they try to use and utilize Kuomintang, their base, to expand their influence, to let everyone know them, so they can grow in a fast path. So after they formed the first United Front, they fight the Northern Expedition together. But after Chiang Kai-shek became the leader of Kuomintang and several success in the Northern Expedition, he started the White Terror, which to suppress the communist members. And this marked the end of the first United Front. So for today's class, we're going to focus on part C, the development and struggle of the Communist Party from 1927 to 1936, to see their development under the suppression of Nanjing government. So firstly, after the White Terror, what happened to CCP? At that time, Kuomintang had started an encirclement campaign, which was to suppress the communist members. That means actually, White Terror was only the starter of the whole campaign. So under their encirclement campaign, what was the development of CCP? Actually, they had bifurcated into 2 distinct entities. While one group went underground and the other group went countryside. These 2 groups, they were pursuing different kinds of revolution and were led by different leaders with different strategies. One of them, led by the party's Central Politburo or the Moscow-trained Chinese, they aimed at starting an urban revolution, while the other group was led by Mao Zedong, who aimed at a rural revolution on the contrary. So for the people who were underground was a was trying to start an urban revolution, while Mao Zedong was focusing on a rural revolution. To understand and evaluate which strategy was better, I think we should review the rationale under each of them. So firstly, why urban revolution? Who has made this decision that CCP should start an urban revolution? Actually, at that time, the CCP revolutionary strategy was largely determined by Stalin, who was several thousand miles away. You can see in this picture, we have three important leaders in USSR. In the middle, it was Lenin, who was the leader of the party, and on the left side, we have Stalin, and on the right side, we have Trotsky. And Lenin, as the leader of the USSR, he died in 1924, and after that, USSR started a collective leadership. What does it mean by a collective leadership? It means that several potential leaders of the country, they will lead the country together and make decisions together. But at the meantime, they will compete with each other to win the support of the majority and to further become the leader of USSR. And among all the competition, among all the candidates, the fiercest competition was between Stalin and Trotsky. Actually, Trotsky at that time had the hugest potential to become the leader because of his significant role in October Revolution and Russian Civil War. And when it comes to CCP's revolution at that time, his comment was, the Chinese revolution tide had receded to a low ebb, which required a cautious policy of peaceful penetration. Actually, he thinks we should stop our uprising or strikes now. We should keep low profile. Because at that time, actually, Nanjing government has already won the recognition of the new warlords, and more importantly, they won the recognition of the Western powers. These people, they already regard the Nanjing government as the official government of China. So he thinks that we should make use of the peaceful penetration. Penetration here is more likely to let the ideology, that means to let the idea of communism itself with different propaganda to attract people to join the revolution, instead of starting a revolution to involve the people into the revolution. So, for Stalin, since he was the person in charge for the Chinese affair, he decided to use the opposite idea, which was the urban revolution. He insists that China was experiencing a high revolutionary tide, which justified armed uprisings, seizure of powers, and establishment of the Soviets. As a result, he instructed the Chinese Communist Party's Central Politburo to start strikes, sabotage, and uprising in the cities. So from here, as a conclusion, the decision made by Stalin about starting an urban revolution was not actually out of his justified evaluation on Chinese condition, but out of his fear on competition with Trotsky, right? He just tried to win over Trotsky's ideas to show people that he is the person in charge. So this kind of idea, the purpose of his opposition is to oppose Trotsky, not to bring the CCP, bring China to a brighter future. So how about the other side? To start a rural revolution which led by Mao Zedong. Firstly, I would like to show you two pie charts to compare the population in rural area and in urban area. In the first chart, the most important message is, you can see we have three parts. First part is the population who live in urban centers, and then in the middle area, and then the rural areas. You can see actually at that time, almost 90%, that is 88% of the population, that is 440 million people, they lived in rural areas, right? Because at that time, the modernization of China was still very backward compared to other countries. That is the reason why at that time, most people in China, they still live in rural areas, while the urbanization is still at its very early age. So the second chart, you may find the industrialization of China was still at its early age, right? While most workforce, they were agricultural workers, 205 million out of 259 million workforce, right? Only 3 million of them were industrial workers. So because most people in China, they were peasants who live in rural areas, that is the reason why, actually, according to this reality, Mao said the real China is not urban but rural. And by this idea, he tried to organize peasant support and develop Soviet areas far away from Kuomintang control, which is not to directly confront their encirclement campaigns. He also said it is our task to unleash the huge potential of the peasantry. So you can see, is a true believer of the revolutionary potential of the peasantry, right? This is also a quote from Mao Zedong. Within a short time, hundreds of millions of peasants will rise in central, south, and north China with the fury of a hurricane. No power, however strong, can restrain them. All imperialists, warlords, corrupt officials, and bad gentry will meet their doom at the hands of the peasantry. That means peasant will win it all. And all these people, they will just face their end, right? And also, it's because he's believed in this kind of truly revolutionary potential of the peasantry that inspired his organization of the CCP's Jiangxi and other bases between 1928 to 1934. For example, he and Zhu De, they set up the base in Jinggangshan and formed the 4th Workers' and Peasants' Red Army. When he was in Jinggangshan and other bases, Mao Zedong kept spreading his ideas of revolutionary potential of peasantry. He always told all the peasants around that the key to success of communism was to gain support of them and to control the countryside, and then to distribute the land of landlords to peasants and to wipe out all the debts of the peasants. So it's about the freedom of peasantry, right? And because of these ideas of freedom of peasantry, his idea won vast support of the peasants, and many of them decided to join the Red Army. You can see from this picture, in the middle we have Mao Zedong, and he was surrounded by different peasants with a smiling face who is listening to his ideas of the freedom of peasants, right? In these places, actually, they had evolved a self-sufficient territorial base without relying on the help of the guidance of the Comintern or the party leaders at Shanghai. So you need to see the relationship between Mao Zedong and the Comintern and even the Central Politburo in Shanghai, right? They were having a very awkward relationship. You need to see that at this time, Mao Zedong was actually opposing the Central Politburo and the Moscow's instruction because they were proposing an urban revolution, while Mao Zedong was trying to start a rural, like the total opposite idea of them, right? So he was regarded as, I won't say traitor, but he was regarded as an unorthodox member, like the one who is different, right? But for Mao Zedong, he still think like he need the support of Comintern, he need the support of the Central Politburo and all the people. That is the reason why he tried to keep a very peaceful relationship with the people there. So his attitude can mainly conclude as outward obedience and inward disobedience. What does it mean by outward obedience and inward disobedience? Just like nowadays, when some students they fail to hand in their work on time and I have to send the message to remind them, they will immediately reply me by telling me they will hand in their work ASAP. They were handing their work in 2 hours, right? But this is like an outward obedience to show me that you are a very obedient student who can hand in their work, right? But actually after maybe a day or two, I still didn't receive your message or your work because you totally ignore your responsibility of doing that. So that is what it means by outward obedience but inward disobedience. But you have to see, for the CCP Central Politburo, they were not stupid. Of course, they knew what Mao Zedong was doing in those spaces. They never approved of Mao's activity. And even for Moscow, they only tolerate it. And the reason why they have to tolerate it is because all other CCP-led uprisings, the urban revolution, had failed. And Soviet Union itself was actually started their economic reconstruction under Stalin. They tried to start their 5-year plan. They tried to reconstruct their country, and because of this, Soviet Union has started to cut their financial support to CCP. So you can see the balance between the Mao's growing powers and the Central Politburo in Shanghai, their power, right? Because on one hand, Mao is gaining more and more support from the peasants. On the other hand, the Central Politburo in the Shanghai, they didn't really gain any success. At the same time, the Soviet Union, because they need to construct their country, they cut their support to the Central Politburo. So their power actually was decreasing at the same time. And we all know the result. In the power struggle, Mao was able to score an impressive victory and won increased recognition of his activity, right? Because of his very realistic strategy. So now, Mao Zedong was waiting for a chance. Because on one side, his growing influence, on the other side, the decreasing influence of the Central Politburo, right? He was waiting for a chance to get what he thought he deserved, the power, right? So what happened is, on June the 24th, 1931, the Secretary General Xiang Chongfa was captured and executed. That means now one important official was killed, died, right? So, by sensing the desperation of Politburo, Mao, he boldly invited the members in the Central Politburo to attend the first All-China Congress of Soviets to be held in Beijing, in his capital, in November 1931. Do you think the members from the Central Committees will join? Actually, 28 of them joined. But you have to see here, the intention of their participation is not to support Mao for his rural revolution. The intention was actually to correct his unorthodox conduct. Actually, they think they need to go Beijing to tell Mao that you need to stop your rural revolution. You need to go back to city because we're starting an urban revolution. But since it was Beijing, right, and since they don't really have a leader for them, that is the reason why, with the control of the majority votes, Mao was elected as the chairman of the Central Executive Committee of the All-China Soviet government. You have to see here, wow, this is a victory of Mao, right? But you have to see, Mao's success was not complete. The 28 Bolsheviks still retained their iron control on the Politburo, to which he could gain no admission. He's only have the post there, but it didn't really mean that he is controlling the Central Politburo. But I think it still can be counted as a small victory of Mao. Congratulations to him. But you have to see, at the same time, while they were having power struggle between Mao and the Central Politburo and Moscow, Chiang Kai-shek was relentlessly organizing the expeditions against the communists. So, in next class, we are going to talk about the Kuomintang's encirclement campaign and the long march of Red Army. See you next time.